Have you ever felt a sudden wave of irritation toward the very person you've spent most of your life with? Could it be that after decades together, what once felt natural now begins to feel heavier in ways you can't quite explain? And what if this quiet shift isn't about love disappearing, but about something deeper that happens as we grow older? Many people over 70 begin to notice subtle changes in how they view their spouse. Not because the affection has disappeared, but because the realities of aging, daily routines, and long-buried frustrations start to rise to the surface. These are things we rarely talk about openly, yet they quietly shape the way we feel in our relationships. In this video, we'll unpack 8 subtle but powerful reasons why older adults often start resenting their spouse after 70, and what these hidden signals might really be trying to tell us. These aren't dramatic betrayals or explosive scandals. More often, they are the small, accumulated emotional mismatches that go unspoken for years, even decades. And here's why it matters. Recognizing these emotional undercurrents gives you the chance to better understand your feelings, restore a sense of balance, and even bring peace back into the space you share with the person who has been beside you for so long. So stay with me until the very end, because you may discover insights that not only make you feel seen, but also help you look at your relationship with clearer, more compassionate eyes than ever before. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. We're building a space here for honest, compassionate, and thoughtful conversations about aging, and you are always welcome here. Reason 1. Unspoken expectations about retirement. One of the most common, yet often overlooked, sources of hidden resentment after 70 arises when retirement unfolds differently for each spouse. For decades, many couples imagine retirement as a golden chapter filled with freedom, rest, and perhaps exciting adventures together. But what happens when those visions don't align? Maybe one of you dreams of quiet days in the garden, savoring a slower pace, while the other envisions life on the road in an RV, eager to explore new places. The truth is, each of us carries an internal blueprint for how retirement should look. And when your partner doesn't follow that script, disappointment can creep in, even if it's never spoken aloud. These mismatched expectations don't always erupt into arguments. More often, they create a subtle sense of distance. One partner slowly pulls away, while the other begins to wonder why things no longer feel quite right. Psychologists link this to something called narrative identity, the story we all tell ourselves about what the future will be. When your partner's story veers in a different direction, it can feel as if they're rewriting your story without asking. Take Robert and Linda, both in their early 70s. After retiring, Linda eagerly filled her calendar with volunteer work and community events, feeling energized by her new activities. Robert, on the other hand, had quietly hoped they would spend more time together at home. He never voiced his disappointment, but a quiet resentment began to build each time she left the house with her planner already full. This kind of emotional drift doesn't mean the relationship is broken. Instead, it's a signal that the relationship is asking for a new agreement, one based on the present moment rather than old assumptions. Because after 70, resentment often doesn't come from dramatic betrayals. More often, it grows out of silence between two people who simply hold different visions for the same stage of life. Reason 2. Lack of emotional renewal. As we move into our later years, a quiet but powerful shift often happens in long marriages. We stop renewing the emotional connection. In the early decades, life naturally provides plenty of ways to stay engaged. There are children to raise, careers to build, homes to establish, and responsibilities that constantly keep you in motion together. Even in the chaos, there was always something fresh pulling you closer. But after 70, when the pace of life slows down, a realization sometimes hits. You haven't truly talked in years. Not about chores, errands, or medical appointments, but about deeper things. Dreams you still carry, fears that keep you awake, memories that shape who you are, or even the simple question of what makes you feel alive today. When that level of sharing fades, the relationship can begin to feel more like a routine you manage than a bond you treasure. Psychologists call this emotional drift, the gradual decline in sharing vulnerable thoughts and feelings. It doesn't happen because couples stop caring about each other. More often, it happens because each assumes the other already knows them so well that words are no longer needed. But the truth is, emotional intimacy doesn't survive on autopilot. It needs to be renewed again and again. Take Susan and Gerald, both 76. One evening after dinner, Susan suddenly asked, "What's one thing you're still curious about in life?" Gerald paused, surprised, and then smiled like someone who hadn't been asked a real question in years. That single moment reopened something between them. It reminded them both that connection lives in curiosity. Resentment, you see, isn't always loud or dramatic. Often, it grows quietly in the empty spaces where we stop being curious about each other. And after 70, the less we make an effort to rebuild that emotional bridge, the more likely we are to find ourselves standing on opposite ends, feeling lonely beside the very person we once called home. If you're still watching this video and these insights are speaking to you, please type the number 2 in the comments below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content designed to inform, encourage, and inspire. Now, let's move forward. Reason 3. The weight of past disappointments. By the time you reach your 70s, the past isn't just behind you. It often sits right beside you, showing up in every conversation, every silence, and every unexpected memory that resurfaces. In long marriages, one of the most common yet rarely spoken sources of resentment comes from old wounds that never truly healed. Maybe it was a promise that was broken. Maybe it was a dream one of you sacrificed for the other. Perhaps it was a season where one partner carried more than their share, quietly, without complaint, but never really forgot. These aren't always big dramatic moments. More often, they're small hurts left unresolved, slowly settling into the background. Psychologists call this accumulated grievance. Over time, those unresolved feelings don't simply vanish. Instead, they harden, almost like stone, and years later they can reappear when life slows down. After 70, with fewer distractions and more time to reflect, those buried emotions have a way of bubbling back to the surface. This bitterness often isn't about something that happened yesterday. It's about something that happened long ago, but never stopped echoing through the years. Robert, now 81, once said, "It's not that I'm still angry at her for what she did. It's that she never said sorry, and I never said I needed her to." That quiet admission captures the subtle distance that can build silently over decades. The danger here is subtle but real. Instead of addressing the past, many couples learn to live around it, pretending the wound has closed. But that unspoken pain doesn't stay buried forever. It seeps into the present, showing up as irritability, sarcastic remarks, passive withdrawal, or emotional distance that neither partner fully understands. And unless those unhealed wounds are acknowledged, they become like a silent third presence in the relationship, sitting between two people who once promised to grow old side by side. So if you ever feel a heaviness that doesn't match the simplicity of your day-to-day life, it may be worth asking yourself, what part of the past is still waiting to be seen? Because without healing, the past never truly stays in the past. It lingers, quietly shadowing the present, and slowly weighs down the love that is still trying to survive. Reason 4. Emotional needs begin to shift. One thing many people don't realize is that our emotional needs are not fixed. They evolve, and often they evolve in different directions for each partner. After 70, a deeper longing for connection often surfaces, a desire for gentleness, presence, and emotional closeness that feels more vital than ever before. But when one partner is still operating from the habits of earlier decades, fixing problems instead of listening, offering solutions instead of empathy, that can create a sense of emotional starvation. The relationship may remain intact on the outside, but inside, one partner begins to feel unseen. It's no longer about grand gestures, fancy gifts, or dramatic declarations of love. At this stage, it's about the smaller things that matter most: being noticed in the quiet moments, being heard without interruption, and knowing that someone still cares enough to understand what's happening in your heart. Resentment begins to build when one partner feels invisible, or worse, emotionally irrelevant. Mary, now 77, once confided, "He still fixes the sink when it breaks, but he hasn't asked how I'm really doing in years." That statement wasn't born out of cruelty. More often than not, this disconnect comes from failing to recognize that the rules of emotional connection have changed. What worked in your 30s or 40s may not be enough anymore in your 70s. What once felt like love, providing, protecting, staying busy, can slowly begin to feel like avoidance, or even distance. As our needs become more internal and more nuanced with age, the failure of a partner to notice or respond to those needs starts to feel personal. And over time, that silence or lack of awareness can build into a quiet resentment. Not just resentment for what the partner isn't doing, but also for the fact that they don't even realize what's missing. This is, in fact, one of the most common yet most avoidable sources of resentment. And it often begins with something surprisingly simple: asking the question, "How are you really doing lately?" When asked sincerely, that single question can create a bridge across an emotional gap that might otherwise continue to widen. But when it is never asked, the distance only grows, and the relationship quietly suffers. If you're still here watching and finding these insights meaningful, please type the number 4 in the comments below so I know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss upcoming videos. Your support helps us continue creating thoughtful content to both inform and inspire you. Now, let's continue. Reason 5. Differing coping styles with aging. As our bodies change and health concerns begin to play a larger role in daily life, couples often discover they respond to aging in completely opposite ways. That contrast can create unexpected tension. Some people become cautious, choosing to slow down, avoid risks, and preserve the stability they have. Others feel a sense of urgency, a determination to squeeze every last drop of experience out of life while they still can. So when one partner wants to take it easy and enjoy a slower pace, while the other is eager to travel, volunteer, or launch new projects, what begins as a simple lifestyle difference can gradually evolve into an emotional battleground. The clash isn't just about how to spend time, it becomes about values, identity, and the meaning of this final stage of life. It's not only about how each person chooses to spend their time, it's also about what each one is trying to avoid or embrace emotionally. A partner who fears physical decline may retreat into the safety of routines, clinging to familiar comforts. Meanwhile, the other, fearing the weight of regret, may push hard to make the most of every moment, chasing freedom and meaning before time runs out. Without honest communication, these differences can become distorted. Each partner may begin to see the other as unsupportive or even selfish, without realizing that both are simply trying to make peace with the same difficult reality, just in very different ways. Take Frank, age 82. For nearly a decade, he begged his wife to join him on simple road trips, hoping for adventure, but she always resisted, saying she didn't have the energy. He felt rejected, as if his desire for shared joy was dismissed. She, on the other hand, felt pressured, as though her limits weren't being respected. Neither of them admitted what they were truly afraid of. These coping styles, avoidance versus action, comfort versus challenge, aren't right or wrong. They're just different. But when they remain unspoken, they quietly fuel resentment. One partner starts to see the other as boring, uninspired, unwilling to live. The other begins to see their spouse as reckless, unrealistic, or unwilling to face reality. And in the space between those opposing views, love can lose its warmth, replaced instead by quiet criticism or emotional distance. Couples who navigate this well tend to do one important thing. They validate each other's fears and hopes, even when they don't share them. That single act of acknowledgement can transform resentment into renewed respect. Reason 6. Financial control and unequal spending. After 70, money is no longer just about survival. It becomes deeply tied to identity, freedom, and dignity. And in many long-term marriages, this is where quiet battles begin. One spouse may want to spend freely, enjoy the savings they worked hard for, buy the things they've earned, travel, or shower the grandchildren with gifts. But the other may worry about running out of money, about becoming a burden, or about living longer than expected with fewer resources than they need. What looks like generosity to one partner may look like recklessness to the other. What feels like wisdom and caution to one may feel like control or stinginess to the other. Resentment in these situations doesn't just stem from the money itself. It comes from what money represents: autonomy, safety, and even power. Carl, age 78, shared his frustration that his wife would sometimes buy things for their adult children without first discussing it with him. To him, those actions felt disrespectful, as though his voice didn't matter. But from her perspective, every time he questioned her spending, it felt as if he were treating her like a child. These patterns often linger unspoken for years. One partner stays quiet to keep the peace, while the other assumes everything is fine. But beneath the surface, pressure slowly builds until it erupts. Sometimes all it takes is a single receipt, a small investment loss, or a disagreement over a gift to a relative to spark a full-blown argument. In some marriages, this tension even spills into passive-aggressive behavior, like hiding purchases, keeping secret accounts, or guilt-tripping one another over every dollar spent. The problem isn't truly about the spending itself. The deeper issue is the lack of shared vision and the silence surrounding it. Without clear agreement, money becomes a battleground where fear and unmet expectations quietly fuel resentment. Couples who manage this challenge successfully do one thing differently. They sit down regularly, not just to review numbers, but to talk openly about what money means to them at this stage of life. They share their fears, their values, and their hopes. Because without that emotional honesty, money will always carry more weight than it should. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment the number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Your support allows us to keep creating meaningful content to inform, encourage, and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 7. Emotional withdrawal and reduced intimacy. In the earlier years of a relationship, life is often filled with laughter, daily conversations, gentle touches, and those knowing glances that need no words. But after 70, those habits often begin to fade. Not because love has disappeared, but because comfort takes over and routine gradually replaces curiosity. Emotional withdrawal usually happens quietly and almost without notice. One spouse stops sharing the little stories from their day. The other stops asking questions. Evenings that were once spent together side by side slowly turn into separate routines carried out in separate rooms. There isn't necessarily an argument or a dramatic crisis, just a subtle silence that grows thicker and heavier with each passing year. And as emotional distance widens, physical intimacy often begins to fade as well. It's not just about sex. It's about the tender, everyday gestures, holding hands, playful teasing, even making eye contact across the table. For some, the withdrawal happens out of fear of rejection. For others, it comes from body changes, health challenges, or the mistaken belief that closeness no longer matters at this stage of life. But the truth is, it does matter. A lack of intimacy sends a silent message that you are no longer worth the effort. And when that message is delivered over and over in small, unspoken ways, it builds up like sediment in a pipe, slowly clogging the flow of connection until closeness feels nearly impossible to recover. Marjorie, age 74, expressed it this way. She felt invisible to her husband after he retired. He was always physically present, always in the house, yet no longer truly with her. She said, "It's like living with a ghost who used to know me." That sense of invisibility is one of the deepest wounds a partner can feel. Many couples assume this is simply the natural course of aging. But it doesn't have to be that way. Emotional and physical closeness can change shape with time, but they don't have to disappear. With awareness and small efforts, those connections can be renewed, even late in life. The most resilient couples are the ones who keep learning about each other, surprising one another, and reaching out even after decades together. Not because of obligation, but because the heart still craves warmth, perhaps even more so when the world outside begins to feel colder. Reason 8. Unresolved grievances that were never spoken. By the time a couple reaches their 70s, they have likely lived through decades of shared history, some of it filled with joy, and some of it quietly painful. Yet, the things left unsaid along the way, the disappointments, unmet needs, and small betrayals, do not disappear. They settle instead, like fine dust in the corners of the heart, hidden but always present. What often begins as, "It's not worth the fight," or "I'll just let it go," slowly transforms into a silent erosion of trust and affection. Over time, one partner may begin to resent how certain decisions were made, how one gave more than they received, or how their dreams were quietly placed on the shelf without ever being acknowledged. It's rarely about one single dramatic moment. More often, it's the accumulation of small hurts over many years, the dismissive comments during conversations, the vacations that never happened, the career sacrificed without thanks, the lack of emotional support during life's hardest challenges. Each unspoken wound becomes another layer of distance. After 70, people tend to have less tolerance for glossing over the past. The mind naturally revisits old crossroads, replaying choices and sacrifices that were never fully healed. And when those regrets resurface without ever being voiced, they can harden into quiet anger. Not because the other person is cruel or unloving, but because the hurt was never brought into the light, never acknowledged, and never allowed the chance to be released. William, now 81, once admitted that he had never told his wife how bitter he felt when she dismissed his desire to move to the mountains after retirement. "She didn't even ask why I wanted it," he said quietly. "It's like I didn't count." What he had buried as simple practicality in his 60s slowly fermented into bitterness in his 70s, and that is the risk we so often overlook. Suppressed feelings don't dissolve with time. They ferment, and when they resurface years later, they carry not only the sting of the original moment, but also the sharpness of all the years they were left unspoken. Yet, here's the hopeful truth. Healing is still possible. With patience, openness, and even a single honest conversation, many couples find a way to begin again, not from scratch, but from a deeper place of understanding, finally addressing what needed to be said all along. Relationships that span decades are layered, complex, and full of moments that shape us in ways we don't always realize at the time. If you are in your 70s or beyond, you likely already know that love, the real, enduring kind, goes far deeper than the picture-perfect stories we once imagined. It isn't flawless, and it isn't without challenge. Resentment isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with slammed doors, heated arguments, or long silences. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, a gentle pulling away that grows into a sense of disconnect. But here's the key. Recognizing it is the first step toward healing it. So ask yourself, of these 8 reasons, which one felt most familiar? Which one gave you pause? Perhaps it's a gentle nudge toward a conversation you've been putting off, or a reminder that it's never too late to restore connection. Wishing you good health, peace, and happiness always. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can continue this journey together. Or perhaps it serves as a reminder that it is never too late to repair what has been strained. Love in later life is not about perfection. It's about understanding, forgiveness, and the willingness to keep learning about one another, even after decades together. And if this video has encouraged you to reflect on your own relationship or offered a bit of clarity along the way, then it has been our honor to share this time with you. Thank you so much for being here today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned and how you might apply it in your own life. Your voice matters, and your reflections bring not only motivation, but also inspiration for us to continue creating content that truly speaks to your journey. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with others who may benefit. Your support allows us to keep building this space for honest and thoughtful conversations about aging, relationships, and the wisdom that comes with experience. Wishing you good health, happiness, and peace always. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can continue this journey together.